Let's do it. Wow. I just discovered why they named this bike the Rocket. This is the second generation of the legendary Triumph Rocket 3, and it is one of the coolest motorcycles I have ever seen. But the big question is, does it live up to the hype? We're gonna find out right now. And since this is the second generation, obviously that means that there was a first generation. And the first gen was a pretty big deal when it came out in 2004. With its huge 2.3 liter engine, and depending on which model you got, depending on which version you got, it either had 127 horsepower or 148 horsepower. And just to give you guys some reference, the Harley Cruiser touring bike at that time was pushing around 65 horsepower. So this is a huge, just double or triple the amount of horsepower that the Harleys were making. But it was a really cool bike, and one of the first things you noticed when you looked at this thing was the engine. It looks like they pulled this engine out of a car and just put wheels around it. It was just ginormous. But after a 16-year run, the Rocket 3 needed an update. But not just an update, they needed an entirely new revamped model. And that's what we got here, the new Rocket 3R. And just to clarify with you guys, this is not just a cruiser bike. This is in the category of muscle cruiser or, muscle bikes, which puts it in the same category as the Suzuki M109, the Harley-Davidson Breakout, the Harley-Davidson FXDR, the Ducati Diavel, the Yamaha VMAX, the Yamaha 1900 Raider, the Honda VTX 1800, the Honda Valkyrie, and I'll add my personal bike to this list, my 131 Harley-Davidson Road King Special. So the Rocket 3 is in some pretty good company and categorized with some pretty cool bikes. But it's pretty hard to deny, mainly just by looking at it, that it might be one of the coolest ones in there. I mean, just look at it. With that beautiful 3 exhaust header pipe and the aluminum frame and the single-sided swing arm. I'm not sure if I've ever seen anything so mean looking in my life in terms of cruiser bikes. And part of what makes this bike so intimidating is the size of it. It's just massive. The gas tank is literally 5 feet wide. The bike weighs 12,000 pounds and is 12 feet long. This is not an entry-level bike. It's for people who know what they're riding and know what they're doing. And and when you're riding, you get to a certain point. When you first start riding, you want something that's real comfortable and that is light and you can kind of whip around, because you don't want to drop the bike. Once you get to a certain level in your riding, and almost a certain arrogance in your riding, you start looking for the biggest, baddest bike you can possibly find. That's kind of where I'm at. I just like humongous, giant motorcycles. This is one of the biggest. And one of the things that makes this bike so intimidating is its massive size. I mean, this is a man's bike. You gain credibility just from riding this motorcycle. If bankers see you roll up on this thing, they start trying to give you loans, even though you spent your last penny on buying this bike, which cost around $24,000, which makes it one of the most expensive muscle cruiser bikes on that list. However, sadly to say, it's not more expensive than what I paid for my Road King, including the 131 crate motor. But MSRP is the same, but this thing this almost doubles the power of a stock Road King with a 114 in it. But I would still consider this motorcycle a bargain because of how much horsepower it has. Oh, wait, did I not tell you how much horsepower it has? 165 horsepower and 163 foot-pounds of torque. That makes it one of the torquiest motorcycles ever built, to ever come off of any production line ever. And although it's massive, it only weighs 640 pounds, which is, 240 pounds more weight than a 600 Super Sport, but at least 150 pounds lighter than my Road King. This is the motorcycle equivalent of a Dodge Hellcat, if the Dodge Hellcat was pushing out 500 more horsepower than what it currently is. So you could get this, or the exact same power to weight ratio would be a 1200 horsepower Dodge Hellcat. That's not that bad. That makes this thing a pretty good value, doesn't it? Now, what I love about this bike is how refined it looks. I mean, Triumph has a much lower budget than Honda or Kawasaki or Harley Davidson. And sometimes it takes them a little longer to bring out a new model than the other companies do. But when they bring out a model, it's done. It's very clean. I mean, the castings and all the attention to detail is absolutely there. And with this bike, the more you look at it, the more awesome stuff you see. Like this, check this out. Let me show you guys. This thing's got cruise control, which every motorcycle out there being built now should have cruise control. It's a code. Just throw it in there, put a couple buttons on there. So they put this really awesome interface up here, and it's got a lot of really cool features Like look at the, this is one of the themes, right? You can change, this is a quartz theme, you can change that to the Chronos theme, which looks like, well, okay, I'll show you the quartz theme. Look at the neutral right there in the gears. Watch this. The gear actually changes. How cool is that? The problem is it's almost distracting, and I want to watch that little gear change while I'm driving. Tons of information gets put in here. Let me change this to right there, and you can change it. This is the Chronos setting, where it shows you the gear indicator up there. And then all these buttons over here, you can change them and what they're gonna be, and you can show all, and you can hide them, and it's actually really, really cool. It's one of those things that you should probably read the manual for, but I never will, and I'll just figure out what features I need, and then I'll forget about the rest of them. And then someone like 10 years later will be like, hey, you know your bike can do this thing, and it's really awesome. I'll be like, no, I didn't know that because I'm an idiot and I don't read the manual. That's kind of how that's kind of the game I play. Now the Rocket 3 comes in 4 different models. You get the Rocket 3 GT, which has the forward controls, comes with a backrest, comes with a windshield. And then you have the Rocket 3 GT 221 edition. And from what I can see, the 221 edition is 221 newton meters. It's what other countries use to measure torque. It's just kind of a celebration of this is the torquiest motorcycle that ever came out of production. And the only difference is it's $1,000 more, and it's a different shade of red, and it says 221 on the side, which, to be honest with you, it's pretty awesome looking. I would probably pay the extra $1,000 to get it, just because it's, you know, a little bit more rare, and it just looks so cool. So as you can tell, I'm pretty pumped about this bike. Let's go take it for a spin and see if it lives up to the hype. See what it rides like. Sounds good. Now this is not the stock exhaust. I don't even know what they sound like with a stock exhaust. This has a nice works exhaust on it. Although the stock exhaust is not that much bigger than that. It's still pretty small, and I think it looks pretty good. Let's take it for a spin. Let's start this ride with some words of wisdom. I got a good one for you. Isaiah 12:2. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For the Lord God is my strength and my song, and He has become my salvation. Amen. Let's go ride some motorcycle. Let's go ride some big motorcycle. Put on my M1 Moto gloves. Oh yeah. I'm excited. You guys excited? Let's get excited together. Very impressive. It's such a fun bike. Guys, I love muscle bikes. And what's unique about this thing, the closest other bike that I would put it in that same category, I mean, I named a lot of muscle bikes earlier, but this more resembles something like a Valkyrie, a newer Valkyrie, or even or the Diablo. Just because it's, well, actually, the Diablo has forward controls, and I think so does the Valkyrie, if I remember right. Well, it's just I like the lower controls. You know, this is similar to the I don't know what this is similar to. The big giant bike, mid-range controls. I like that. That's fun. You know, I like mixing it up. It feels more sporty. You feel like you have a little more ground clearance when you're turning. And you know, like most big bikes out there, once you're moving, they only feel big if you got to bench press it or if you got to pick it up. Once you're moving, it's just light and nimble and feels just awesome. Except, you know, when you see a car, when you're eyeballing a car and you're like, this guy's gonna pull out in front of me, and you're like, I could take him. I'm bigger than that guy. The chances are the engine I have in this thing is bigger than half the cars out there. 99% of the cars in Europe don't have an engine that's 2.5 liter, which is so funny that this bike actually comes from, Triumph is a British motorcycle manufacturer. It doesn't matter what gear you're in, you just crack that throttle and this thing moves. See, this, you know, sometimes people forget, and this is what motorcycling is all about. Just a bike that when you jump on it, you can't help but smile. You can't help but be like, this is awesome. I'm loving life. It gets you outdoors. It's pretty hard to motorcycle indoors. So anytime you get outdoors, you get to see God's beautiful creation, enjoy some fun. Let's do it. Wow. 1 I just discovered why they named this bike the Rocket. This is so much fun. Oh man, I'm loving this, guys. If you're picking one bike to ride for the rest of your life, it's probably not going to be a muscle bike. Because there's, you know, some type of riding you don't want to do. You might not want to do touring or long distance. I would feel great doing a long trip on this. You also have the GT version, but I think I'd be more comfortable on this. If maybe put a windshield, whatever. I don't need a windshield. Man, this is fun. It's so fun and smooth in the corners. That 3-cylinder engine is incredibly smooth and just has all the power you could ever need everywhere whenever you could need it. All right, let's figure out what mode I'm in. All right, I'm in road mode. What modes are there? There's sport mode. Maybe we'll try sport mode. Although I didn't see it. It wasn't really getting any feedback, negative feedback from what I was doing on road mode. Let's try sport mode, and let's try our hands at the first 0 to 60. I think this thing's supposed to be able to do 0 to 60 in like, I read about it. It was either 2.3 or 2.6 or something. It was pretty fast. It was a pretty fast 0 to 60. I don't think I'm gonna be able to hit it. Not on the first. I'm gonna do this once. I got a pretty good strategy, and I don't know what sport mode does in terms of traction control. But I think what's going to be the big defining factor is whether I have to shift or not. Well, and also just the launch. A foot on the rear brake, take it to around 2,000 RPMs. Go. All right, this thing hit 60 before I got a shift. So I'd imagine that was pretty quick, and I think I can do even faster. I can do way faster because my launch was awful. We're gonna cruise this thing on the highway. Man, you know, a lot of people kind of forget about Triumph. I will say this: if you pull up riding a Rocket 3, and everyone's got a Harley or everyone's got something else, no one's gonna forget about you. It might make you pretty unforgettable. Look at that guy. He doesn't forget about me. He's looking at, he's staring at me, staring me down. It's like, what is that humongous bike? Guys, this bike is awesome. Tons of fun. It's cruising on the highway. I'm having a blast. I got a lot of good videos of me riding a lot of cool bikes. Check them out right up here. Remember, it is not what you're riding, but where you're going. It's all about the destination. We'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm having a blast riding this bike though.